Resistance Radio is brought to you by Black Swan Outdoors. Our mission is to help you realize and develop your self-reliance, whether it's in the wilderness or the city center. All right, well, welcome back to Black Swan Outdoors Resistance Radio. Today we're going to continue the Tradecraft series and talk about safe travel. And we're going to talk about this from the executive's point of view more than a personal point of view for, like, say, just, vacation or holiday. But I think that anyone planning a trip abroad or even in an unknown area within the country can draw upon some of the skills and some of the awareness that this podcast will bring out. So I think there's a little bit of something for everyone. So I think one things to start out with is to think about your overall security program, the thing that you're going to put in place, the protocols that you are going to live by as you go forward into a travel preparation. And this might be at a formal level if you have this within your company, or maybe this is something that you're going to do personally. So, for example, the company that I work for does not have a security program for their travel. So I institute some things going above and beyond their management's expectations in keeping myself personally safe. But also, what I want to think about is keeping also my company safe too. And even though I'm not a high executive that have lots of influence in my organization, I am a gatekeeper, so to speak, to those people. And I think that everybody, even if they're not in an executive position, need to kind of look at their role as, hey, I'm potentially a gatekeeper, a weak link, so to speak, into our security protocol. All it takes is someone hacking into my computer to get into someone else's computer in the way that it's networked and such, and so on and so forth. So I am certainly an important part of keeping the organization safe. But I myself am the most important part in keeping myself safe. So when I go to a travel, what I like to do is I like to look at kind of some 4 stages to this program that I want to implement. The first is a risk assessment and analysis. Then what I want to do is I want to look at the pre-travel planning and some contingencies. Then the next stage then would be, what are some of the protective strategies that I could put into place? And lastly, some kind of post-travel assessment. The country assessment and risk analysis begins really with understanding where you're going, looking into that. There's a lot of sources that you could go to on the web, of course, to look into sources. Some of the places I go when I go abroad would be the CIA Fact Book, first World Travel or World Fact Book. Just kind of get a real general look at a particular country. And then I'm going to look at the State Department and see what the State Department says as well, if there's any notes or security concerns that I need to know about. So those would be my first kind of go-to places. And then from there, I'll kind of drill down as time permits into different specific areas. But what I'm going to want to look at here is I want to look at what are the things that could potentially risk or put me at risk. And if I understand what those things are, then I might be able to come up with plans to mitigate that risk. There are all sorts of things from natural disasters, political issues to regional issues that I want to know about as I'm walking into this planning process. So that next level is that pre-planning or the pre-travel planning stage. And this is what I want to look at, is start looking at some, where am I going to be going specifically? How am I going to be getting there? When I'm in country, do I have a meeting place that I need to go? Where is that going to be? How do I travel to those places? Will I need to work with a translator and other people? What are the political unrest issues, natural disaster issues that might happen? Do I need a bodyguard? All these kind of general, broad questions that I want to put into place. And then what are those contingency plans should some of these things that came up in my risk analysis happen, so that I can enact on them? So I kind of know, I already have an idea of what I want to do. So then that next level there is the travel protective strategies. And so these are the countermeasures that I'm going to put in place to help protect myself. So these are the strategies that I want to say are my protocols to be protective. So if I know that an area is totally safe during the daytime, but at night becomes a little more sketchy, then I know that I want to be off the streets and in my hotel, for example. And I know that I have a cutoff time of 9:30 to be out, kind of creating a curfew for myself so that I need to go. So these are just kind of an example, and you could have many, many others. One of the strategies that I use for myself, for example, is that when I go get my bag at the carousel, I move out of that area as quick as I possibly can. So I go to the baggage carousel. If I have checked luggage, I grab my bag and I get out and I get to a taxi or the limo or the predetermined transportation that I've decided to go on, and I move out of that way. This is the most dangerous part of your travel, so I want to keep myself moving through that whole process. So let's dial down a little bit into the personal strategies here. A couple rules. You don't want to travel with any personal information that reveals yourself, okay? So this could be articles of clothing that you might be wearing to the things that you might have with you on display that are going to tell people about yourself. We talked a little bit about the gray man concept. This is where really it starts playing a role in terms of keeping yourself safe, so that people don't understand, like, do you have specific loyalties to a football team? Do you have specific hobbies? Are you a fisherman? Are you, are you a alumni from a particular school, right? What are your personal interests? All these things you want to try to keep suppressed, kind of keep down, because you don't want any of this stuff to come out and be used against you in a manipulative kind of way. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more later. Next, you want to sanitize all of your information that you do carry with you in terms of electronics specifically. So if someone does a search of you, what are they going to find? What are they going to find in your pockets? What kind of receipts are they going to find? What kind of contacts do you have on your phone are they going to find? What can they use against you inside of that pocket litter, right? The CIA will place pocket litter specifically on an agent to help kind of create a storyline of what they want the perpetrator to understand. And we want to kind of do the opposite. We want to take away any kind of information, unless we want to specifically, unless we want to kind of specifically deter people or kind of send them down a wrong path of who we are. So this is really important. So just sanitize all that information that you might have. Printed materials, discs, SD drives, things that you might have in your possession. You want to make sure you don't have that critical information that can be stolen, taken, or intercepted in any kind of way. Your hotel safe is not adequate. There is always a key or a combination to get into that. You can't control that from, say, a government agency or even the corporations that might be interested in getting the material that you have. So anything that's electronic that needs to be in your possession and in visual control all the time. I know there's a lot of corporations that require people, if they have a work laptop, to take that laptop into the hotel or the restaurant in with them, even if they're just going out to eat or lunch with a friend, that they need to have total control, that having that laptop in the trunk of a car is not enough for their safety procedures. So this might be the first kind of step that you might look at to protect yourself a little bit more. The next thing I want to talk about a little bit about is the targeting techniques. So the things that people use to target against you, to make, they see you as a mark and they want to get something out of you. These are the things that they're going to be looking for. So the first and foremost is ethnic targeting. So oftentimes it's the person of the same ethnicity as you, or country of origin, or have some kind of similarity for you. Because when you go into a foreign place, whether it be somewhere in the States or abroad, more specifically, people kind of take a shine to the people from their country. So if you're in Germany and you just randomly come across an American also traveling, you have a lot in common with that individual, and they can use that kind of that common thread and that kind of heartstring against you, and it's often done. So even in Ed's manifesto, if you don't follow the blog, very interesting. Ed talks a lot about this, about how in resort areas in Mexico, it's often American citizens that are a bigger threat than the Mexican nationals in terms of kidnapping, because they can create a bond very quickly with their target very fast. One thing you want to be aware of, anything that's like a conference or a symposium, these are all opportunities for individuals to elicit information about you and your personal interests, your corporate programs, your technical knowledge. So people who are widely published, they're put on YouTube for lectures, for example. This is all information that people can find about you, using social media to draw in on you, and use that information to target you, to talk specifically. So, someone might come up to you and say, well, at this such and such conference, I saw you here, or you spoke about this, or you attended this meeting. I was there. What did you think about X, Y, Z? And this is a great way for them to kind of lead into the conversation and, again, build that rapport. The next thing I want to talk about is and kind of expand on the rapport building, because people will use rapport. They'll create a friendship with you in a way to manipulate you. So they'll be best of friends with you. They'll take you out to dinner. They'll treat you really nice, maybe introduce you to your family. And this might happen over a couple days. It might happen overnight. It might happen over a couple weeks or years. And all they want to do is have some kind of influence with you, so that you unwittingly give up secrets with your company, the government, wherever you represent. So that's just one thing to kind of think about, that there are people that have these interests. If you got information that other people need, there are people who are willing to make a long-term commitment to breaking down your guard and getting information that they need. So oftentimes we can be put into compromising situations, and these situations can be avoided in many cases with a lot of the pre-planning that we talked about earlier. Oftentimes these situations are planned, or they're just incidences of opportunity. So someone sees you as a mark. So for example, you go into a hotel to check in. The hotel lobby is a notoriously dangerous area for travelers. People sit in the lobby and they wait to see who comes and checks in. They will look for jewelry. They look for how they're dressed. They'll look for luggage, and you then become a mark. In some cases, that's just opportunistic. They might be just passing through and they see you on the street and they see you as a mark, follow you in the hotel. Now they know where you're staying. Or they are sitting in the lobby intentionally looking for people. And this is what happened, I think it was Paris Hilton maybe, or some celebrity, where she had a $10,000 some necklace and jewelry stolen from her after they broke into the hotel room. They saw her checking in, or they saw her in the lobby or wherever. Now, a lot of people who are executives and celebrities don't check in. They have that all prearranged. They come through a back door. Someone greets them, takes them straight to the room. They never go to the lobby for that reason. And if you can make those arrangements for yourself or your executives, that might be a nice touch to help kind of add some added protection. Taxis, restaurants, these places are all easily places for you to be targeted and scammed. So you want to look at hotels and banks to kind of do those financial exchanges where possible. If you see protests erupting for any reason or large gatherings, people out in the street, this is something that you should send a red flag up that you should avoid. Don't stick around to see what's going on. You can see what's going on later on television on the news. It's not worth your risk to say that you were there. Oftentimes, also, there are a lot of high tensions in gatherings for religious purposes. So if you're in and around holidays for specific religions or different gatherings for the holidays, you want to avoid those places, especially if you have specifically different views religiously than those groups. Give them space and don't give them a reason to be provoked, essentially. And then, of course, there's certain places in town that you want to stay away from. I remember some story that an executive brought in some travelers from Egypt, and they were absolutely scared out of their mind because they were going to be traveling to Chicago because of all the news of the shootings and the things that happened. Now, if for people who understand Chicago, know Chicago, it's isolated to the west and south side. But when you're at O'Hare and you're around the suburbs and you're even downtown, you never see any of this violence. It's very, very safe. The irony, of course, is they come from a country where Americans feel that it's very dangerous. So here are people coming from what we think is a very dangerous country into a country that is very safe in a very, very safe area. So, it all goes both ways, understanding kind of where you need to be and where you do not need to be, all in that kind of pre-planning phase. Again, we're kind of trying to bring back this to pre-planning, looking at the perspective of what do you need to plan ahead to avoid some of these situations. And then lastly, of course, there's the honeypot. This is a kind of a classic Russian move where there is some kind of romantic or sexual offer that's offered to you to lure you to a bar, lure you to reveal secrets, lure you to be compromised in some capacity. Even if you think it's likelihood that they're not, that they're not getting anything out of you, they could be underaged and they could go to the authorities intentionally, claiming rape, or perhaps unwittingly you don't know, or they don't let you know that they have a spouse or a boyfriend, right? And again, puts you into a very precarious situation. You always want to check your bags. There is, even if you don't put something illegal inside your bag, you want to check your bag before you get, especially to your airport. Someone could have slipped pornography in, and it could be illegal. They could put in drugs and use you as unwittingly as a mule, money, any kind of item that someone wants to smuggle out of the country. They can unwittingly use you as that mule, and that puts you in that position. So it's good to always double check your bags before you head to the airport, and keep control of your items, your luggage. Never let it out of your hands or your sight. I see this at the airports all the time, where people just leave their bags next to the chair as they go to the restroom or go to drink water or something, thinking that they don't want to lose their seat. And that their bag will signify that someone's sitting there. The other thing to be careful about is taking photographs of any kind of military compound, checkpoints, police, military operations, federal buildings, things like that. Stay away from that kind of stuff. That's a huge red flag, and that'll get somebody on you really quick. Even if you don't notice that they're following you, that will get somebody real fast on you. And then, of course, refrain from carrying anything or creating anything that's anti-government, especially of the host government that you're in. That's just also another red flag. If you have a history in the social media of this kind of stuff, and you go to that country, they're going to have someone follow you. They're going to know that you're there. You can't think that you're just going to be anonymous. And so just be cognizant of these things. Keep a very low profile. Don't do unnecessary risks. Get involved in unnecessary risks. The more low profile, low key you're going to be, the safer you're going to be. So let's talk about some strategies on keeping yourself safe with technology, because this is a growing area. And again, I want to kind of stress the fact that you are, even if you're not an executive, you're a gate to, you could potentially be a gateway to that executive. So being electronically or network savvy is really important as you're traveling, especially for business. So you want to make sure that you've sanitized your laptop. This is where it's important to have a personal laptop and a work laptop, and that you're taking your work laptop. You want to be able to keep that, if you've got a removable hard drives or encrypted thumb drives, keep that on you at all times. Don't let that go away, especially if it's got sensitive information. Anything that you keep, like a document that has emails, access to reports, passwords, internet history, your cookies, system access instructions, all that stuff needs to be wiped off your computer. You really should not be traveling with any of that. Any of that can get taken off your computer. Your company laptop can be cloned before you leave. Ask your IT to do that. And then when you return, you can then get that information put back on your computer. And when you're doing that, you can compare that information that's on there so that you can detect to see if any malware, spyware, or anything is on your computer that while you are abroad. So that might be something that, again, planning ahead and talking with your IT before you leave about this might be a good measure. If your computer is outside of your visual range for any moment of time, consider yourself to have been compromised. It does not take very long for someone to compromise your laptop or even your cell phone. You might have a listening device put in. Your device might be turned into a listening device. You might have some kind of spyware or other malicious software put on there. So now you have to treat that laptop as if it has been compromised. One thing I think a lot of people forget about is cleaning out their voicemail before travel, especially if you've got some sensitive messages on there. If there's any secure passcode to get that. I would also say you want to sanitize your cell phone again, remove any unnecessary voicemails, emails, photographs, documents, passwords that people keep on there. If you've got a camera, again, remove anything in there that you wouldn't want that reveals anything about your business or who you are. Eavesdropping can happen in your pocket. Governments can take control of your phone and eavesdrop on you. They don't have to put listening bugs in hotels anymore. As long as you have your cell phone, they still do. And when you travel to places like Russia, every room is bugged, in certain hotels. So you just have to assume that you're being bugged and that you're being followed, that you are being listened to, and that you're being monitored electronically with everything you purchase, and everything that you do essentially is following you electronically. Places like London, they're visually following you with cameras, and they can do that. Companies also will bug your airline seats. They bug taxi cabs, any formal meeting rooms that might be available. So you really want to just discuss business and negotiation strategies amongst yourself and do it in a very safe manner. Just by turning up your television or a radio isn't often enough to drown out the sounds. Maybe the best advice would be water, talking in a bathroom with the tub running, might be the closest thing you could do. And of course, taking the battery out of your cell phone before you have those conversations, or not having the cell phone in the room at all or where you're at. So when you get back from your travel, there's a couple things that you can do. You want to change all of your passwords, your passcodes, access codes from your email, your voicemail, any personal accounts that you might have. Go back, talk to your IT guy, get that cloning done to look to see if there's any malware on your computer. If you feel that there was some kind of breach, you want to make sure you talk to any of the security officers that you have in place in your company. They can determine whether or not you need to escalate that to the police or FBI, for example. Kind of make that into a more formal government record. But at this phase, it's important just to say, you know what, I've been compromised. Let's work on what our damage report is going to need to look like. How are we going to need to assess this? Let's assess this damage, and then let's start coming up with some ways in which we can deal with whatever those breaches are, and then going forward, any countermeasures that we need to implement so that things like this don't happen again. So it's important to come back open-minded with the ability to have an open dialogue with your business, with your company or organization, so that these things don't happen in the future. So before you go, we've been talking a lot about planning and getting kind of into the kind of the mindset of planning your stuff so that you are, the more planned out you are, the more safe that you can be. So of course you can do all the regular things like checking with your hotel reservations, your flight reservations and tickets. You want to leave information also with friends and family if you can, or a coworker, or your boss. I do this. I have an Excel spreadsheet that I fill out my planning form, and then what I do is I just copy that sheet and I paste it into an email and send it to my manager. Now he's got a record of everything that's going on with me and my travels, so he knows where I'm going to be at, where I'm, what I'm going to be doing, who I'm going to be meeting with, and the hotel reservations and everything that I need to know is then he is aware of. I keep records then also available to friends and family, whomever needs it, with my health insurance and other useful information for emergencies, so that at least people have that in place. If you're traveling into developing countries, vaccinations are important. If you lose the proof of vaccination, you might need to get that from somebody, so it's nice to be able to give that copy of that to somebody else as well. So we talked a little bit about learning about your place that you go with. If you have the time, take a deep dive into the specific laws that are different from your country. Take a look at the customs in particular. How more customs, language the better you're going to be able to fit in better and be a little bit more low key and not stand out as much. Make sure that, of course, you've got, like I said, those shot records, your passport, anything that you need to travel with in terms of identifications and such. Granting a power of attorney to immediate and close relatives. Complete and update your will as well. These are things that many Americans don't do or don't think about. It's very important when you travel abroad, especially if you're going to be gone for any length of time or a place that might be potentially dangerous. Another thing a lot of people forget about is carrying an extra pair of eyeglasses, or maybe you have contacts and you lose your contacts, you lose your glasses. Will you be able to see? Can you make it through the rest of your trip? Can you get a prescription easy enough? Same goes with medications. You might not be able to get the medications you need because of rules. You might be able to get medications easier abroad as well. But so make sure you have a copy of the prescription that you need and the name of the drug and what you need to have. And this is also good just to have on your person as well, in case if you are reliant on a particular type of medication, if something were to happen to you, you're unconscious, people would be able to know what kind of drugs you take, what you may be allergic to, for example, and maybe your blood type. Making copies of your airline ticket, your passports, all this stuff. I do this personally. I just do this, take pictures of it on my phone and send it and then delete it. Then people have all that information. I might keep a copy of my passport on my cell phone. That's what I do personally. I used to make photocopies, but nowadays with your cell phone, it's easier just to do that. I always carry my passport identification number in a separate location. It makes it in a passport photo. Those two things give me the ability to get a new passport replicated quicker, and I don't keep that obviously with my passport. I keep those in two different locations when and where possible. If you have unnecessary information in your wallet, remember we talked about the pocket litter that talks about that means credit cards or your library card or anything that might be kind of a pain to replicate or replace if you were to lose. You want to take that out of your wallet. Not necessary to travel with it, and also it's less risk for towards you for those things to be used against you. If you can memorize your, again going back to your passport, if you can memorize your passport number, that's super helpful. You really, if you lose it, you want to go to the embassy as fast as you can immediately. This is a huge risk to you. But not only to you, but also to the country. People can use passports to forge and get into the country illegally, and that's really important to think about. Not just yourself, but other people in this terms. You want to keep your passport not in your back pocket, not anywhere that it can be picked. You want to keep it in, if you've got a hidden pockets or a money belt. Or a hidden pocket in a jacket that you have, keep that on you, and don't flash it around. You don't want to let people know what your country of origin is, again, if it's possible, and don't give it away to anybody. Oftentimes, hotels will require you to leave a passport, and that's just expected, and that's part of your research when you look in to where you're going to go. Is that expected? That might be required by the government for that passport to be handed in. So just be cognizant of that. We talked about how important it is to have a point of contact, someone who knows where you're at with your itinerary, whether it be a boss or a family member. You should also have a point of contact in the country that you're visiting. More important sometimes than having the embassy available to you is a local person who's going to come to your aid. There is not much that an embassy can do. There are some things that no one can do in country other than the embassy, obviously. But if you run into an emergency, you're more likely to get immediate help from someone who you handed your business card to than going to the embassy to getting help. There's some things that just the embassy will absolutely do and be better, of course, but in terms of immediate needs, your friendships, the rapport that you build, the contacts that you have are going to have a more meaningful, often direct influence in your safety. And they might be able to help you with making some safety considerations as well for a safer trip, especially if they are kind of boots on the ground. They're from that area, they're native of that area, or they're traveling with you and they are native of that area. It's often advised to register yourself with the embassy or consulate, let them know that you're in the area. You can do this electronically now. You don't have to physically go to the embassy or the consulates. You can do this through the State Department website really easily, which is nice. We talked a little bit before about kind of that gray man principle, and I want to kind of talk a little bit more about that. Basically, just keep yourself at a low profile. Don't make an attention of yourself. Bring attention to yourself. the clothing that you wear, the jewelry that you have, religious items that you might carry, the books that you're reading. Remember, all that speaks to who you are. Do not advertise yourself as an American. You can keep people guessing on your country of origin is kind of the hope. So people don't peg you as an American right away. You're wearing NFL sweatshirt. You're wearing a NBA jersey. They're going to know immediately that most likely you are an American. If you're in the armed forces, you should be wearing your military uniform unless you're required. You should avoid wearing that military uniform to be a target unless you are actually required to do so. Not necessary to bring unwanted attention again to you. I guess some general personal safety considerations. You want to keep, a high level of situational awareness. Always believe that you may be at risk of being in danger at some point in time. Just be conscious of this. You don't have to stress over it completely. Just be aware that you may be putting yourself into a dangerous situation at any point in time, and just stay kind of aware of that. Don't do dumb things like flashing money, flashing jewelry, like we talked about before. We talked about staying away from high crime areas. If you're at night, stay in well-lit areas. Don't stay in dark areas. Avoid places like that are, alleys and side streets. Vendors or even really young kids could be making a mark out of you and helping work with somebody else. So just even if they're innocent-looking kids, they're capturing your attention while someone's picking your pocket. If someone is approaching you that might be looking suspicious, just head into another direction. It's always good to have a couple good phrases of the local language so that you can ask for help. That might be something kind of learn before you go. And I always map out where the police department is as well and other safe havens. Police departments, pharmacies, fire stations, things like that. And of course, people who travel alone are often the first victim. So if you get separated from your group, or even you're just entirely alone for the entire trip, this is when people are more apt to come up to you and try to take advantage of you. And I've seen this myself when I travel alone to the developing world. People will flock to you to take advantage of you if you don't have a group with you. I've noticed that certainly. When you get to a hotel, stay away from street level rooms, but don't go too high. Second, third, maybe 8th floor. 10th is often the highest a fire department can get to you with a ladder in most places, 8 to 10 high. So you get beyond that, and you will not be able to get out via a ladder truck should that need arise. Stay away. You want to use the elevators rather than the stairwells, but it's always good just to scope out where the stairwell is and what it looks like, so that in case there is a fire, you know exactly where to go if we need to get down quick. There's often fire equipment on the walls, including hoses or axes or sometimes defibrillators, things like that to help in case of an emergency. Take special note of where those fire alarms might be in case you need to pull one or push the button. If you lose your key, of course, you want to report that immediately. And before you go into your room and accept your room, you want to make sure that all your doors and locks lock appropriately. Give your room a good look, looking behind anything from the curtains to drawers, and making sure that your room is in good order before you accept that room. And in some places, it's customary to give your room key to the front desk. Best just to keep that in your pocket with you if you can. So these are just kind of very general safety things to think about, and some things that you want to kind of maybe implement, if you haven't already, to some of your travel plans. I know it's a bit long, and we could go a lot longer for sure, and really kind of dial down into this area. If you're interested in a topic like this, I do recommend Escape the Wolf from Clint Emerson. Very, very good book about kind of protecting yourself and corporate travel. And he can really dial down this information to you. There's many other great resources, blogs on the internet that you can go to as well. But I would start there. It was a great, fascinating, and interesting read from Clint. And he's the same author of the 100 Deadly Skills, if you're familiar with that series of books. So this was a bit of a longer podcast and probably a little boring to some. But I think it's an important part of understanding building your tradecraft is how to travel safely. So again, if you haven't already, visit the blog, and we have new posts weekly, and of course the Instagram, many posts throughout the week on there as well. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing from your comments, suggestions, and questions in the future. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please visit our blog for articles and more information at www.blackswanoutdoors.com, or check us out on Instagram.